Now we will discuss the merits and demerits of edible vaccines. So if we talk about the advantages of edible vaccines, as we discussed, they have efficient mode of action for immunization because we don't need to add subsidiary elements to stimulate this immune response. So they are effective as compared to traditional medicines. And they also generate this mucosal immunity as we earlier discussed. Edible vaccines are comparatively cost effective because, as I said, you don't need to utilize a lot of high tech to produce and extract the desirable components, and then storage are not needed. So these all factors made it much more cost effective. The storage opportunities are abundant. The seeds of transgenic plant can be stored, it can be dried, it can be transported from one place to another. So that makes it very much practical. Similarly, plants only we can use their extracts like oil extract or aqueous extracts, and they can be utilized as vaccines, and they can be stored for a longer time. They can be easily stored as well. So we don't need sophisticated equipment. It's only you need to have proper soil, um, nutrient-rich soils, and you can grow your crops like you'd grow other crops. So this can be as simple. Then they can be very widely acceptable because they are used as food. They are not injected, so you don't have to actually wait and go to see a doctor to get these vaccine injected. They can be easily available. Then you don't need to have these trained medical staff or nursing staff to administer these vaccines. And this is very important for underdeveloped countries or less developed countries where these facilities may not be available. And these are the areas, problem areas, where we would see more prevalence of such disease that can be cured through use of vaccines. Then they can be used as second generation vaccines as well. It is also possible to develop second generation vaccines by we can integrate different antigens together, and we can have improved vaccine or second generation vaccines can be produced through these methods. Another important element is that it is very upscalable. This technology is very easily upscalable because you can, if you need more vaccine, you can grow more plants. It can be as simple. So upscale to upscale a technology. Otherwise, it can be very difficult in industrial setting. But if you talk about growing something at the farm, upscaling is something that is very easy, and this makes it very practical once we demonstrate that we can actually produce certain vaccines in the labs first, and they can be scaled up at a larger scale. Then another good thing about these edible vaccines is that we don't have to heat kill pathogen in this case. So there are no risk involved because if they don't, there are chances that if you don't kill these pathogens through heat in traditional methods, they might develop that disease rather than preventing that disease. So this risk is also minimized in case of edible vaccines because we are not dealing with these pathogenic microorganisms, and we are not destroying these pathogens to make vaccines. So this is a different process. Now, there are some limitations of this technology as well, like any technology would have some limitations. One of the limitation is that it is possible that people can develop this tolerance against these vaccines. It may be overconsumed, it may be underconsumed. Similarly, plant systems are living system, and there are very huge differences in glycosylation pattern in plants and humans as well. So that could make it complex in certain conditions as well. Again, the dosage, this is required from generation to generation, or from plant to plant, or from protein content to protein content, or age, weight, and ripeness of fruit, quantity of consumed food. They are all very variable, and it cannot be easily controlled as we can easily control the dose of medicines, or we can give prescribed medicine at a specific dose, specific time, depending upon age of the person. This is more like a food, so it could have different stages at which is consumed. It can have different amount it is which can be consumed. It can be different people at different ages, they might be consuming different doses, so that makes it a little more complicated than the traditional vaccine systems as well. uh, Another thing is that you need to have standardization. We can make it standardized in case of traditional medicine very easily. We can control the dose, but again, this is not very much easy, or it's not very practical in case of plant-based vaccines. So that is also another challenge, and this can develop, people can develop tolerance against these vaccines if they are not properly administered. So this also generates a risk as well. Then we have to look at the plant stability. As we earlier discussed, if you have to cook the food before consumption, then these vaccines, they won't be stable in plant. So you have to look at that these do not get denatured. The way we consume food, and this could be different from one part to another part in the world as well. The way people consume different food, that can be different. Cooking practices can be different. Storage practices can be different. So that is also another problem that can arise. Similarly, if you have developed edible vaccine through a food material, for example, if we take the example of potatoes that contain these vaccines, they can be stored at 4 degrees C for a longer time, and they would not be infested by microbial pathogens. But this is not the case in case of tomato. So again, every plant would be behaving differently, and their, the perishability in terms of infestation or food infection, that might be different. Uh, Another important consideration is it must be made that we must have demarcation between these vaccine fruits and normal fruits. Or if you are using vegetables, so which vegetable is basically a vaccine vegetable and which one is a normal. So we have to have this proper demarcation between these lines in order to grow, in order to store, in order to identify, in order to consume. So all these factors are they can be very critical. So this technology has to be, although it has got a lot of potential, but there must be some standardization, and there must be some mechanism and ways and strategies by which we can make sure that these are effective and they are leading for the improving the living condition. They are reducing the disease burden and not actually adding to that. So there are equally risk involved as well. So we need to be careful in order to design strategies and mechanisms to administer such edible vaccines in human population.